This is Randall Wark of eChannel News. Today we're in conversation with Mark Hicks. He's the president of Mate and his partner, Art Artiles. So welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So the first question I always ask is a really simple explanation of what you do. So I want you to picture yourself at a cocktail party. You're talking with people that are non-techie at all. How would you explain what Mate does as a business to people in that situation?
Well, at the core, it's always been partnering and being the outsourced IT company for a lot of these businesses that we've worked with. I mean, obviously, the dynamics have changed. We've been in business now 31 years. So in the early days, we were also a turnkey hardware supplier and other things like that. And for the past 20 years, we've been more cloud facing and security focused. But in most of our cases, we're bringing enterprise expertise to the SME and SMB that's allowed them to have the IT departments that they could never have or afford. And in many cases, we develop long relationships with them. Our average engagement with customers is well over a decade.
Well, first of all, congratulations on 31 years of being in this crazy business. A lot of people have fallen along the years, and that longevity is quite a testament to that. You must be doing something right in your company. So why don't we talk about that? Can you pinpoint one thing that contributed to the longevity of your business of Mate?
Well, I think it really comes down to treating people the way you would want to be treated. So we have always focused on two things. One is applying a business-wise application of technology. We don't just go in and look at what makes us the most profit, or we don't look at the solution out there that is the shiniest and newest. Like anything else, you go ahead and you want to do things for the right reasons. So our engineering is separate from our sales and account management. If you ask any one of our engineers how much something costs, they don't know. We keep it that way. They recommend to the customers the best fit of the technology for their needs and the best deployment for their needs. And then the account manager follows up and cleans up pretty much like a street sweeper after a parade, going in and explaining why technologies cost what they do. Because again, the last thing you really want to do is necessarily give a client the answer they're going to be happiest with is, oh, this is the cheapest item out there. Oh, that's for me. You got to give them the right solution. Well, and quite honestly, crazy support. Well, yeah, cost versus value. Value is a tough thing because it's intrinsic. We always have to work very hard on giving people the best value. But the other thing is honestly crazy levels of support. If you listen to any of our client interviews or any of our case studies that we do, the thing it always comes down to is we're always there for them. Something breaks in the night. We describe it to them. We don't use techies when we're talking with them. And it gets resolved and gets resolved quickly. And quite honestly, we don't write their checks. So many times you'll have a customer that will opt for something we don't recommend. And we don't come back to them and say, I told you so afterwards. If they have issues with it, they know.
There's another aspect too in terms of what we do is we help our clients avoid what we like to name the barracuda effect. You know, the barracuda is a fish that is always chasing every shiny object it sees in the water. Technology is that shiny object. You know, there's always a new application. There's always something new. And what we're finding, especially in today's environment, is not everything has been vetted from a security perspective. It may be new, it may be glitzy, might be even be functional, but not necessarily secure. And security is one of those things that we are very, very attentive to. So we help our clients rationalize. Okay, we'll look at the technology that they want to enable. We'll look at it from everything down to the licensing language, because people aren't aware when you accept an EULA or the end user licensing agreement for an application, you're basically saying, I've read this 5,000 word document and I agree with this, and I may be giving away all the data in my environment. I may be giving you access to things that if I knew that if I was cognizant of what I'm giving you access to, I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, they call it the bleeding edge for a reason, right?
Exactly.
And when you're in business, you don't want to be a victim of any kind of structure that would be maybe not the best for the company just because it's new. I totally understand.
Well, it's not only that, but you're also, depending on the industry you're in, you've got certain fiduciary and regulatory responsibilities when it comes to protecting data. And if you're invoking or acquiring technology that bleeds data that you're supposed to be protecting, the regulators aren't going to look kindly on that. And if there is a breach, that will regulate, that will factor into the fines and penalties that you may be saddled with.
Sure. Let's have a little bit of fun. My next series of question is kind of based on the fact that I believe, Mark, that you're a Land Rover fan, specifically a Defender.
Well, actually, I predate that. Randall, if you've heard of the Series 2, I actually have a Series 2A that was hot from Africa. It's been to 5 of the 7 continents, and my daughter and I use it to get out on the weekends with.
Okay, so let me try some Range Rover or Land Rover facts, and we're going to kind of apply to the business. It's just a different way to ask some questions. Let's have a little bit of fun here. So first of all, as you probably know all these facts, but I'm going to just share them for the audience. The Range Rover is the only vehicle ever to be displayed in the Louvre Gallery in Paris as a masterpiece of industrial design. Now, the one who designed it, Charles S. King, he designed it obviously to be utilitarian, and he literally just drew a box around the inner components, thinking that they would update it later, and it never was. They just took his design for what it was, and yet here it is in an art gallery. Why do you believe that a lean technology, those are your own terms off your website, why do you believe that a lean technology approach is a wise approach to business?
Well, there's a number of things we can look at. One is that if you're looking for end-to-end security with all the different moving components that are in the mix nowadays between hybrid cloud, local applications, edge security, all the other risks and anything else, it's very easy to let things get out of control. It's very easy to have a potpourri of technologies in the mix. And it's very easy also to have a customer lead the direction with, hey, I want this. As Art was saying before, what's shiny and what's new.
Mhm.
Approaching things very, very straightforward. Why has the Land Rover survived all these decades with, as you were saying, very little change? Because it was a good product. It started out as very robust, and irregardless of what bells and whistles have come along the way, the inherent core was solid. So, there's a few things that people don't think about when they're looking at a vehicle, if you would. A vehicle gets you from point A to point B. That's its primary objective. Everything else is really icing on the cake. Everything else ties around people's perceptions and their desires. Do you need Sirius radio in your car? Well, maybe you feel you do, maybe you feel you don't. But at the end of the day, it's something that's a desire, not an intrinsic need.
So
If indeed you go ahead and build off of the base fundamentals where the core is there, then okay, you want you want an old Land Rover that has a wind wing on the back or mag tires or whatever the case may be. Okay, but it's still fundamentally an intrinsically solid vehicle, the old ones especially. So in essence, that's what we mean by keep it lean, keep it straightforward, have the fundamentals there. The fundamentals now are obviously security, functionality, but also the monitoring and the management capability. If you have no insight into a client's network, you don't know what's breaking. You know, in the old case, like my antique Land Rover, it has 3 gauges. Why am I not concerned about it? Because intrinsically, there's not a lot to break. There's a lot to break nowadays with networks. There's a lot of various and intrinsic events that could happen bump in the night. So you have to have that insight. You have to have that security. You have to have it, but you also have to keep it lean. Keep the number of applications quality, but minimized.
Fact number 2. So we're going to go Series 1. Series 1 Land Rover predates the Land Rover company by 30 years. It used to be called just Rover. So in the history of Matt, what technology did you adopt that was ahead of your time?
Oh, there were a few that we did. One of which is we actually started putting our clients on the cloud even before it was called the cloud 21 years ago. And the reason we did it wasn't because it was new and shiny. We have 2 different companies. One is Mathe and one is Business Recovery Center. Business Recovery Center started in the early 90s also. But intrinsically, it was a business continuity and disaster recovery preparedness company. So we would constantly look for ways that things could break, for how to get clients through disasters and other things along those lines. So ultimately, what we looked at the cloud for was ways that we could build in a lot of these things that smaller businesses couldn't necessarily afford, but we could inherently build it in the mix. So having the mobile desktop and the VDI, having it between different data centers, having the advanced backup, having the security and monitoring and all these other things, we started doing 21 years ago before they became vogue, because we wanted our clients to continue to have 100% uptime, continuity, disaster recovery, all of these other things that when we tried to implement at the site level was extremely expensive and not always successful.
Fact number 3. The Land Rover, anyway, the first one, had a steering wheel in the middle, like a tractor. So when it comes to guiding your company, what do you think is the most important in terms of direction? What do you need in terms of making sure that you're going exactly where you need to go, steering that company in the right direction?
Well, one of the things everybody has to do in this industry is keep an eye on future technologies and directions. But again, getting back to our theme, business-wise application of technology, we're not selling what's the shiniest and new. There have been a lot of technologies that have come and gone, and directions that people claim would be the next thing, but weren't. So one of the things we're always looking at is directions and how they have business value and how they ultimately would be a business-wise application of technology. One of the things you had said was it's a crazy environment. It is. And quite honestly, we always have had an ongoing joke with our engineers and our staff where we said, if you don't like the industry at any point, just wait 2 weeks, it'll change. And it really has. It's been quite an interesting ride over the years. We were ahead of the curve in cloud by far. We were ahead of the curve in implementation of certain technologies and others. And we still try to be. Our goal would always been to try to be 5 years ahead of the curve, always making sure that our clients are going in the right direction.
We're going to talk now about the Series 2, the Cuthbertson edition. And at one point, you can actually buy this version of the Land Rover. It had 4 tank tracks instead of wheels. And this was designed to cross the highlands without getting stuck in all that soggy ground. So what obstacles have you faced in your 30 years of business where most of your competitors got stuck in.
Oh, well, we've made our fair mistakes, not with our clients, but with our own growth and directions and others. It's always tough because unless you're an IBM, you never have that fail safe, if you would, of having a product or a concept that would go south. One of the challenges has always been, or was at least in the old days, stocking. Trying to keep ahead of demand, so you always had stuff available for clients. Now, granted, we don't do that much anymore, but still we stock some firewalls and other things so clients need it. Obviously, if something breaks in the night, trying to get something on the spur of the moment, network switches, this, that, we made some mistakes on that. And part of that is us, part of that is the partners we've dealt with. We've always had a challenge getting good salespeople that were able to really project and work with our company ethos, from the sense that always doing the right thing. It's tough because we've had salespeople that have only been focused on them. They'll try to promote whatever makes sense for them. They'll try to go in different directions. And they don't necessarily share that ethos. So we've had a little bit of a cycle of salespeople.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about that same Series 2. It was also the first monster truck because they fitted it with tractor tires at one point. So let's talk about tweaking of your business. What's the biggest tweak a company can do with their existing IT? So if you're going to spend a little bit of money and you're giving some direction to a company, what's the biggest tweak they can do right now?
Well, unfortunately, the sad thing is, Randall, when most people think of their IT expenditures and focus, they're thinking on at the desktop level, the end user facing. They're thinking, oh, let's get bigger monitors, let's get faster PCs, let's get new notebooks, let's focus in that aspect. But truly, the biggest tweak that anybody should do, if they're not one of our clients, is focus on security. Because anybody who's been reading the news, unless they're Rip Van Winkle and has been locked in a cave, realizes that the threat horizon is much different than it was a decade ago or even a year ago. Anybody that wants to really put big tires on their truck needs to put them on, because they have to wade through the swamp of what is now really foreign threats, local threats, everything else. We've always taken security very seriously. And to the point to sometimes it can irritate a client here or there, where they're like, oh, I'm trying to get to this website, or oh, I'm trying to do this, and security is blocking me. Oh, why do we have data loss prevention in place? Why do we have stateful packet inspection in place? Why? I just want to do my job. Well, they're there so you can keep doing your job without an event or interruption.
In the 1950s, the Land Rover made the first crossover. It was called the Road Rover. Never knew about this. It was part SUV and part car. Now, we talked about the cloud a little bit. When it comes to the cloud, do you see a hybrid approach the best way to go, or are you still one way or the other of private or public? Which is
Oh no, it's the future is hybrid, Randall. Anybody who thinks that the core, we're talking about this before, what made the Land Rover very successful was the core was always very solid. So for the majority of items, as far as your core operation, I still think a private cloud is the most secure and best way to do that. But it's impractical to say you could be totally private cloud. You can't. There's so many SaaS applications and hybrids and connectors that need to go in and everything else that you have to be hybrid. Now, could you be totally public? Well, sure, you could. But then again, thinking back to security and other pieces like that, the worst thing we've seen is for a lot of clients to just go willy-nilly into the public cloud. And if you read a lot of the press that's coming out now, a lot of the MSPs that did that for clients did it out of expediency, or that's all they knew. They didn't know how to build a private cloud. So, oh, I'll just throw you into Azure, and oh, we'll set up O365 and we'll do that. And while those are fine products, the problem is most of them have never had the necessary training and experience to really bolt it down. Easy is easy. IT is not easy. IT is hard. Doing it correctly is hard. Making sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and everything's where it should be is hard. The problem with a lot of public cloud scenarios is they try to make it ultra simple for people to deploy and stand up. And that's good. That saves a lot of time in a lot of areas. The problem is then that's like an iceberg. With an iceberg, you only see 10% of the top of an iceberg is all that's above the surface. Titanic figured that out beautifully. There's another 90% below the surface. That is all the other pieces that should be in place if you deploy public or private. And most of your internal IT as well as MSPs are stretched thin. So if you don't do it right from the get-go, the chances of you coming back to it and putting that other 90% in place to get everything right is pretty slim. And until something breaks, many times people don't even know that other 90% is below the surface. They don't know to look.
Yeah, it's not set it and forget it. It's definitely set it and maintain it.
But also make sure everything is done right to start with. And it wasn't a rush job and it wasn't just patched together. Most of the clients we bring on board, a lot of them have O365 now. You know, they came with it. That's fine. We'll bring it over, we'll supplement, we'll wrap around it. But one of the first things we ask them, are you backing up your O365? Huh? Do you know that your OneDrive and all these, they're not backed up? Microsoft doesn't do that. Microsoft gives you the platform. It's up to you to back up your data.
Last question for the Land Rovers. I want to talk about yours specifically. I've only seen one picture and all I can see was the hood, but I know it was missing the spare tire. Is there one thing that you can't live without in your company?
Oh, our people. I mean, our people is what make the company. The technology changes, but having engineers that have a good education, a good history, a good experience, they can adapt to new technologies, but the principles remain the same. You know, the fundamentals of making sure you do the right things for the right reasons, making sure that you're focused on security and backup and all of these, as well as making sure you listen to the customer. A lot of these are experience. Very tough to train somebody to empathize with the customer and understand and listen. People are so quick to want to, okay, this is the answer, you know, quick, oh, you want to do this, you want to do this. They're not going to take the time or the cycles. I'll send you some shots of the Rover. The reason I took the wheel off the hood is because one of the things is, as you said, you know, off-road, I beefed it up a little bit. I actually raised it. I added bigger wheels. And the weight, a Rover, one of the things about a Rover is it's aluminum. Unlike your typical cars of today, the body was aluminum. And the reason that happened is after the war, there was a real shortage in England of steel. So the only thing they could get apportioned by the government at that time was aluminum from all of the aircrafts that didn't get built, that they had stored up. And interestingly enough, that became the standard after that point. They started using all this aircraft aluminum, very minimal steel, because again, steel was very tough to come by and was rationed. And lo and behold, that allowed them to have a car that was really rugged and, you know, didn't rust. So that became legendary for them. They took what was an adversity and turned it into a strength. And that's many ways what you continue to have to do as an MSP. There's lots of adversity. This is not an easy industry. And quite honestly, and all, you want me to be blatant, if I were looking at starting a business today, it probably wouldn't be this. Don't get me wrong. I love the industry. I love what I do. And I always told myself 31 years ago when we started this, if I ever swung my legs out of the bed in the morning and didn't want to go to work, I'd scrap it and I'd do something else, because I have to be passionate about what I do. But it is a very tough business. People don't look at you like they did 10 or 20 years ago, where IT had some had a glow to it, if you would, where people respected what you did and really looked for that kind of expertise and guidance. Now everybody thinks they're an expert to some degree. I've had clients that have jumped on board new technologies, which we have known to be flawed, and say, look, oh, you want WeChat or you want one of these other things. You do realize that this is run by a foreign government. This has known leaks and vulnerabilities. Okay, if you want to use it for general communication, but do not by any means share any kind of HIPAA protected data or SOX data over any of these venues, and be very careful about what you do.
31 years, obviously it speaks to the testament of the way you're built like a Land Rover is solid. It's been tried and true, tested by fire. You've made it this far, and I'm sure you'll go much farther still. If people want to work with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, they can go to our website, of course, www.mathe.com. We have all sorts of different interactions. We've got lots of blogs and history there. We have all sorts of self-help things, but they can click on any one of our folks. We'll get live attendance. They can also email us at info@mathe.com, or just give us a call. All our information's on the website. It's 1-800-MATHE-99 is our number, and people will answer no matter what time of the day.
So you might cringe at this, but you have to check Mate. That's all I'm going to say. It was nice speaking with you, both Mark and Art. Anything you want to add to just tie us all up there, Art?
So in addition to Mark's answer, when you asked him what is the most important component or piece of our business, obviously it is our people, but without clients, there is no reason for us to exist. So yeah, that is, again, it's still a critical component. So to me, a triangle or a pyramid is an indicator of something that is functional. It's actually an excellent design. And if you look at it, that's what we have. We've got a pyramid or a triangle where each one of the corners is equal. So we've got our people, our processes, but we've got our clients. And we, again, without clients, there is no reason for us to get up in the morning and do this. Otherwise, it becomes a laboratory or an experiment. So, we look forward to interacting with our clients. They do present challenges at times because they go off in a direction that is not good for them. But it's like anything else. It's like sometimes we compare ourselves to physicians because we're looking out for the health of our clients, their business, their people. So again, if you look at clients, they exist for a reason. They've got customers, they've got partners, they've got employees. That's their ecosystem. Our responsibility is taking care of the infrastructure that supports their ecosystem.
And of course, they're the gas that goes in the tank, right?
Exactly.
Without them, the car is not going to move.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, and thank you so much, Art. We look forward to seeing what happens with you guys in the future, and we hope you make it to 62.
Thank you, Randall. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Randall.